make it this weird, wonderful, quirky thing that you just really can't experience anywhere else. Japan gives me a different way of looking at the world. There's this constant sense of exuberance and joy at just discovering everyday life. Their love of grand art is wonderful. The way they embrace their history and their culture is awesome. There's a lot to love about Japan.
For me, without question, and I think you'll probably get this response from a lot of people, my favorite Japanese game designer is Shigeru Miyamoto. You think of Donkey Kong, Legend of Zelda, Star Fox, you can go on and on and on. This is the man who built Nintendo, and in the process, the man who really helped build the gaming industry. I think the best game to come out of Japan is Donkey Kong. And I know that's going back to a classic, but I first played it at my local arcade and later on the Nintendo NES, and now you've got a whole new generation playing it on Wii. On the arcade, it was such a difficult game to play. It's reputedly one of the most difficult arcade games of all time, and I just think it's so great now that you're bringing this classic title to a whole new generation. So for me, the best Japanese game ever designed is Donkey Kong. I don't think there was any one game in particular that made me want to cover video gaming as a job, but at the same time, the games that were coming out of Japan in the late 80s and early 90s really put you, the gamer, at the center of the action as an active participant in a way that I'd never seen before. And in doing so, they really captured my imagination and made me, as a gamer, feel that anything was possible.
Hi, my name is Megan Marie and I work for Game Informer. I'm going to bend the rules a little bit with this one. My favorite Japanese video game creator is Nobuo Uematsu. His music basically defined a lot of my childhood. While a lot of girls were listening to Britney Spears and pop music, I was listening to his music at 5 a.m. out in the cold in the middle of the winter, pretending I knew how to conduct an orchestra to One Winged Angel. And his music was just so captivating in the games, and it just set the world apart from anything I'd ever experienced, that he really, more than any creator, even internationally, influenced me growing up. But the first game that really captured what I thought video games could do and what was possible in gaming was, for me, Final Fantasy VII. There was just something about the characters and the world, and even at the time, the graphics were so impressive, and it was the most captivating game experience I'd ever had. I love Japan as a fan and as a professional because it is basically a central hub for everything that I enjoy, whether it's video games or anime or costume play or fashion. I've said this several times before, if I was going to live anywhere outside the United States, I'd live in Japan. I love it there.
Japanese games have come across from the very beginning, ever since I started as a gamer. The biggest one that springs to mind is actually Silent Hill 2, a game that had such a deep emotional impact on me. Made me think, made me feel. The whole series has been important for me, but Silent Hill 2 especially is one of those moments in gaming which is really difficult to forget. Kind of changes you forever as a gamer.
I think what really sets Japanese games apart from a lot of the other ones out there, what makes them special, is that Japanese games really try to make you feel something, whereas a lot of Western games shoot for this hyper-realism to get it as realistic as possible. Japanese games, for the most part, aren't really interested in that. They go in the completely opposite direction. You look at a game like Bayonetta, it has nothing to do with realism, and it doesn't want to. It's just as far out there as you can possibly get, and it's a blast. It's so fun to play, and I think that's really what's really special about Japanese game development, is just trying to make you feel something immediately, right away, and that you are just enjoying the game. There's nothing to get into, you just enjoy it right away.
You think back to like the Mario games back in the day, how many platforms have come out since Mario? And how many games do not feel nearly as good as this 20-year-old game? It's just great to have this entire country that's so into video games producing all these games that are just fun, very solid, very polished, and has really influenced the industry as a whole. You know, I can't imagine one Western developer who can say like, yeah, Japanese games have had no influence on me whatsoever. Without Japanese gaming, the gaming industry wouldn't be where it's at today. You know, as the country we look to for innovation, full of clever ideas, full of cool, quirky, weird stuff, you know, it's an awesome country.
I think that one of the main things that make Japanese video games so special is that they always strive to create worlds from scratch and make them kind of very involving and adding a bit of fantasy left and right, even though sometimes their worlds might feel a little contemporary, but it's always kind of like something special and a very strong flavor going on at the same time. And on the same token, they don't really care for photorealism, but their games are very credible and very involving at the same time. I think that the best game that has ever come out of Japan is Resident Evil 4. It's probably one of the best games ever made, if not the best game ever made. I know I have a couple, but the thing is that the game just never lets you go. Even compared to games today, the GameCube version still has some of the best graphics ever made. The gameplay is just perfectly balanced. You just never really wish it to end, and that's what a game should be all about, really.
The best game to come out of Japan? That's a toughie. I mean, there's a lot of great games that come from Japan. Probably the one I put the most hours into that I can think of offhand would be Metal Gear Solid 4. I mean, just the overall movie-like presentation of that game. It was like watching a movie, and you get to play every once in a while, which was great too. Hideo Kojima, I mean, that guy makes quality games, and he has for many years now. Looking forward to see his next, whatever he's got in the works. Hopefully some new Metal Gear, maybe.
I had an aunt that lived in Japan for 10 years, and so she wouldn't be able to come home and visit us because it was super expensive and she didn't have the time, so she would send Christmas gifts that were full of Japanese trinkets and things like that, which really got me super interested and curious at a young age about this magical world that I, at the time, never thought I would ever be able to go visit. And then as I got older, I got more into anime and manga and things of that nature, so that kind of pushed the culture on me even more at a later date. And then with video games, things like Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, I was really blown away, not only by the type of atmosphere both games pushed, but also the fact that the games had specific goals to tug on your heartstrings. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, totally one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. I mean, all the Zeldas were great, but for some reason, that one really, really stuck with me growing up. I love Japan, and if you guys love Japan as much as I do, make sure and donate to the Red Cross if you want to help out with the earthquake and tsunami relief.
Japanese games are special and will continue to be special because they actually really had a big influence on creating the language of video games. They were so influential in the very beginning of video games, and the decisions they made and the way that they communicate ideas and concepts to gamers will reverberate throughout the video game industry forever. My favorite Japanese game creator has to be Mizuguchi, because when anybody comes and asks me, are video games art? All I have to do is point them to one of Mizuguchi's games. A Japanese video game that was very important to me and in my perception of video games and my future career was a game called Phantasy Star 3. It was on the Sega Genesis, and I played that game for hours and hours and hours, and probably hundreds of hours. And beating that game, I think 3 times that it required beating it to really complete the story, was a really proud moment in my young life.
Well, I mean, without Japanese game design, you know, we wouldn't really have a video game industry past Pong and Atari. Personally, my favorite Japanese game of all time has got to be Katamari Damacy. I mean, that game really changed my attitude. It was bursting with creativity, totally new gameplay concept, totally new ideas in this game. To me, it's really one of the finest achievements in game design. And for me, it just encapsulates everything I love about Japan. It's got crazy characters in it. It's got kind of touching music. It's got touching characters. It's offbeat. It's wacky. By the time it came out, I had been a journalist for a couple years. I was getting a little jaded, playing a lot of the same feeling games. And then Katamari came out. I'd never seen anything like it. The soundtrack was just stuck in my head. The only video game song I had at my wedding was from Katamari Damacy, Que Sera Sera. Listen to it, gotta go listen to it. You're gonna love it.
My personal favorite is Final Fantasy VII. Just, you know, the first really emotionally engaging game. I think that had a big impact on us.
That'd probably be one of my choices too, but I'd probably have to pick Sonic the Hedgehog on the Genesis, just because that was a game I played to death, you know, back in the early 90s.
I think just the fact, like, playing like The Legend of Zelda so many years ago and just being amazed and just drawn into that world really was something special for me.
I'm a big fan of all the Mario games and the Sonic games and you know, Zelda as well. I mean, there's so many great games to choose from. Final Fantasy as well.
I think one thing I find about Japanese games that's always amazing is that sense of creativity and amazement. You know, they're always going to surprise you.
Might add to that, just the precision and economy, the controls, the interface, everything just is seamless and just fits together so well. I'm a big fan of sushi, so I love Japanese culture. I love sushi. It's a beautiful country, and it's a great place to visit.
It's amazing history, amazing culture. Really one of the most important countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Evan Wells, and I am the co-president of Naughty Dog. I have a ton of games that I love that came out of Japan. Rez, Katamari Damacy, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and Pac-Man. If I had to pick one, it'd have to be Super Mario Brothers. I think that game has done more to inspire many generations of gamers as well as game makers. Japanese games have a certain quality and aesthetic, oftentimes a quirkiness that really sets them apart. I think anybody can probably tell when you're playing a Japanese game, but it's very difficult for somebody outside of Japan to recreate that same experience. I love Japan because of their people. The art, the culture. I have family in Japan. I've visited there many times. It's a beautiful country, and I fell in love with it early.
We love Japan.
I heard the music to Final Fantasy X, and I was just so captivated by it, and I actually got involved in the video game community, as well as video games and just writing about them online, and just for fun, like across fan sites. I never knew that this could actually turn into a career or a job, so I'm really thankful that that happened because, I love games and I love the music in them.
Thank you, Your Grace.
I love Japan for so many different reasons, obviously one of them being for video games, but my other passion in life is eating, so I actually love Japan a lot for its food. And I really love the people. The culture is so fascinating to me because they're so super polite and they're so open to foreigners, and I kind of wish more of the world was like that. I think it would be a much better place, but I really do enjoy going there and feeling really welcome.
The 2 years that I spent in Japan, I count as among the best in my life. When I moved to Japan and started making friends with Japanese gamers, we immediately discovered this amazing thing. We had shared cultural experiences that we could sit down and we could talk about. We grew up literally on opposite sides of the world from each other, and we could sit down and we could talk about playing the same video games, having the same interesting experiences in our childhoods. We did not have shared books that we could talk about. We didn't have movies or music or TV shows. We didn't have any of those things, but video games. We had all played the same video games. We could all talk about the same video games.
Hi, my name is Brian Ashcraft, and I write for Kotaku.com. Who's my favorite Japanese game creator? Well, that's a hard question because there's so many outstanding game creators in Japan. But for me personally, I just really like Yu Suzuki from Sega. Growing up, walking to arcades and seeing these amazing creations of his were just something that I'll never forget. Younger creators, I really like Fumito Ueda, who's currently working on The Last Guardian. He's a very sharp guy, and just talking to him and listening to what he has to say about games or stuff that he wants to do, it's enlightening. I think the thing that makes Japanese games so special are the things that make Japan so special. If you concede that games are a reflection of the culture in which they're made, or a reflection of the people that make them, then obviously Japan itself will seep into the games, So that's something that makes them very interesting to play. It also makes it obviously very interesting to visit Japan or to live in Japan. Why do I love Japan? Well, I live in Japan. I've lived here for a decade, and my kids are Japanese. This was a decision that I made to come here, and then ended up staying, and it's a great country. It's really a great country. It's my home.
I've always respected the game creators in Japan, from Kojima to Miyamoto, but my favorite's become Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil, who I've had the great fortune of spending a lot of time with over the last year. He inspired me to start learning Japanese so our talks could be a bit deeper, but when we talk video games, that language barrier seems to kind of disappear. We're both very similar designers. We look for the same things, and his excitement and knowledge for crafting a player experience is really inspiring and really amazing. I love Japan for their culture, their history, their video games, their food, but most of all for the friends that I have there. And if you can, please donate to the Japan Earthquake and Tsunami Relief with the Red Cross. Thank you so much.